Alright, honestly, blessing or curse? Ring lights for people with glasses. Let me just stare into your future. Hey everyone, welcome back to Fashion Design with Hannah. Spooky season, aka Halloween, is my favorite time of the year, and while a costume for me might be a little bit too intricate and not quite doable in the time frame that I have, a costume for my dog is pretty doable. So this year I decided to turn him into a lovely little Ewok, which is definitely what he was meant to be. I'm also using some upcycled materials, so it is another sustainable pet costume that you could probably do as well. Will Clondyke finally become his inner Ewok, or will he hate hoods? Before we find out the answer to that question, go ahead and leave a like on this video and subscribe if you aren't already. And without further ado, let's get on to the costume. My first idea for the materials used for Clondyke's costume was to use muslin and paint it to look like leather. Kind of like how there have been tutorials going around recently about painting furniture to look like leather, since leather is what the original Ewoks seemed to wear. I feel like I did a pretty good job at blending some leather-like colors, so while it dries, I'll sketch out my ideas for the costume itself. So I wanted to sketch out this project just to give myself a better idea before I start working with the material on Clondyke, because he can be a little bit finicky. He doesn't have much of an attention span for having things fit on him. So I wanted to test out a quick sketch before I started recording just to see what it could look like, and guys, I just couldn't stop laughing because this looked hilarious. Honestly, it kind of makes him look more like an Ewok even just with this very lame looking sketch. And I took my inspiration from this buddy right here. This is just one option. I was thinking of doing something with a center back seam that goes over the hood. And it's not going to be a full garment. I'm not going to do the arms out to the side because I know that he will try to eat it if he can see it. And I don't want it to be too distracting to have on him. So I just want to go with something that's kind of a hood and a cape. And so I could probably do a lace up and not actually tighten it. And then I was going to sketch out another option. Maybe something that comes to the side, a little bit like how this one is. You can see there's this little seam here. And another detail that I was thinking of adding was adding on kind of like these stones and maybe some leather trim that I have. Literally like a leather draw cord. So I could maybe somehow work that in. I haven't determined that yet. But we'll see what another sketch looks like with the closure to the side and if that's possible. After going through the whole process of doing that oil painting on the muslin, I decided it probably wasn't best to have oil paint so close to little Clondyke. I don't think it's really toxic for him, but I worry about putting some materials that could be toxic next to him, and I don't want him to lick it and then have an issue. As far as the style of the costume though, I think from these sketches that I'm leaning towards a side opening, since a lace up in the front will honestly probably scare Clondyke and therefore be harder to fit on him for that reason. At least with the side closure, it'll be easier to put on and take off with him. I decided to opt for a pair of old khaki pants that I had. I had a lot of fun draping for the first round on little Clondyke. I used up most of one of the legs, so I do have another leg as a backup should I not like what I draped. Clondyke was being a little bit of a divo, so this is as far as I got on the first and technically second fitting. Here's his center front, center back, if you will, at the top of his head, and down here is the neckline. Now what I'm really having issues with is trying to get the length on him, because by the time that I figured out the front, he's usually too fidgety to do the back. However, I was able to pin out where the outer edges are, so I will be able to trim off some excess. So here's what it looks like on the flat. I know that I still have this part all pinned up back here because it was helping get rid of excess and caused a little bit of a drape in the front. So here is the front, if you're looking from his view, the right side. And this is the front from the left side, and here is his center front on the top of his head. Now I can trim off the excess and then kind of see what's left and maybe even some things out. It's not going to be perfect after the first fit, but it's a step in the right direction. I'll do the same thing for the sides as well. here's what the new shape looks like of the hood. This is still a pretty rough cut, so I'll need a couple more fittings, but hopefully you won't be tripping on it now. I also had pinned where his ears started on the hood, and I had measured them earlier too. I can actually pull them out here. They're about 4 inches wide, might do 4.5 inches to give myself extra room. I'll do one more fit before marking these out and cutting them. He will almost let me fit the length of it. Right now the length is down there. There's a treat below the camera, so he is very aware. Okay, you go and get the treat. There you go. After that fitting, here's what I have marked off. There's a little dip in the back here, and I don't know if I'll keep it. I'll check that out on the next fitting, and over here is where I marked off where the edges meet on his left side. With the sides closed, you can see that this is where the first fit was, but from the second fit, I was able to close the hood all the way to here. I kept both markings though, as I'll probably want to do something in between the two, just to make sure I have enough room for doing the ear holes for Clondyke. On the other end of the hood, I'll just be pulling back the edge and securing the button loops and the seam allowance. So now that I am more confident in the shape, I'll go ahead and trim off more of the excess fabric. I'm keeping this curve on the back for now, but I'll check the shape on the next fitting. I can now go ahead and just do a large basting stitch. I will do that on the outer edge, and then I'll come back around and just do a basting stitch over on the edges. That way I can do one more fit with little Clondyke before doing the ear. I feel like once I am able to confidently cut his little ear holes out, that he will enjoy it a bit more. So I'll get to sewing that. No! When your bobbin doesn't have any thread left and you didn't realize it till the end of your seam. Yeah, it's really cool. Alright, let's try this again. So now that we have the edges all basted down, I'm gonna go try this on Clondyke one more time before doing the ear holes and then adding the tabs and the buttons on. I'm also going to check out my button stash before I do probably the final fitting of the night, just to see what I have and what might go with this look. So I think these ones might do. They kind of have like a river stone kind of camo look to them, and though I know the Ewoks probably don't have regular old buttons, these are it. This is also that leather trim I was talking about adding to the hood, so I think that'll be just fine for the details. We'll see how it works out. Alright, so Clondyke was being such a divo that I couldn't actually film what my last fitting of was the night for him, so clearly that was the last fitting. I'm not going to get another fitting out of him tonight, but I'm glad I did it because this marking was the second one that I had done versus the original marking, which is right here and somewhere around here. But that ended up being kind of tight, not actually around Clondyke, but there wasn't much drape hanging down below Klondyke's neck as I had wanted. So I'm gonna do a mark that's in between here and a mark in between there, and that'll be my final area for the buttons to land. And I'm also glad I did that fitting because I did have to move his ear opening about 3/4 of an inch or so because of how it was sitting on him with less fabric. So I actually needed to start here, and if I move the button over closer to here, I can actually do more of an ear opening for him. In terms of doing the belt loops, I want a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I have the button right here so I can see where I'm placing it, and I kind of want it to go right out here to about 1.5 inches, so I'll make the loops about 3 inches long. I'll probably do them 1 inch wide, and in between a 1/4 inch and 3/8 inch seam allowance. Trim that down so I have somewhere between 1/4 and 3/8 inch left for the width of the loop. So after I'm done creating the loops, I'll go ahead and finish off all the edges and then actually add them onto the garment. And this is going to be for those people who want an ASMR cut. Ta-da! Button loops. The other thing left to decide is the leather trim, and like I said earlier, this is going to be tricky because I can't machine stitch this. I am going to have to do some hand stitching. So this is the center front of the hood going over Clondyke's head, so I might just pick apart this seam a bit and then have this laying over it. But I know that this is just going to be a little bit simple, so I was actually thinking of knotting it. And obviously the rocks probably aren't going to happen. I think it's going to be too much of a distraction for Clondyke. It might weigh down too much and make him uncomfortable. So I'm just going to knot where I see stones on the Ewok inspiration images and then just kind of place them along here. Not quite sure how I'm going to finish this part. I might just hand tack it here so it just kind of chills out and then this disappears into the seam and chills out underneath. Alright, so with the edges all done, I can now go ahead and do the skinniest loops. And now I'm going to turn them over with a really tiny safety pin. I swear this caterpillar will come to life one day and be a beautiful butterfly. I did one! Now I just have to do the other. A half hour later, in a literal painstaking amount of time, I now have my other loop. Now I can go ahead and attach the loops on both sides of this end. So I sewed the button down and now I can test out to see if the loop works. And it works! Awesome! So now I get to do the same to the other side, and then I'll go ahead and do the ear holes. So now that I have both buttons secured, I can go ahead and test how the loops match up to them. They both line up pretty well. Alright, so now I can go ahead and secure the loops and then work on the ear holes. Now is the part that I really don't want to do since there is no coming back from this if I mess up, and that is doing the ear holes. So I'm going to do a safe cut of 2.5 inches wide for each ear hole to start with, and then I'll do kind of one final fitting with Clondyke to see if he is okay with it. So I officially have 2.5 inch ear holes for him. Let's go try it on him and see if he likes it. Stay. We're all good, baby. Stay. What's this? Stay. Stay. Clondyke. So as I feared, I do have to make these ear holes wider. I think I might make them about 1/2 inch wider, so just do 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch here. And then I also noticed that I'm gonna have to fit the back side. Here's the hood and here's the back, and reshape this back part a little bit. The curve is actually not going on the center back. It's off to the side, so it looks really random on him. So I'm just gonna go ahead and fix that. So I undid the seam and now I'm going to cut off an area where it's a little bit smoother on his back. And then I'm going to pin this back area so I can make it a little bit more fitted for him. Alright, so I went ahead and reshaped the back end, did a dart that I then cut open so I could fold this back, and the dart goes all the way up to about the ear placement. And I expanded the ears so hopefully I can fit on Clondyke again, and it fits a lot better. He's being so fidgety that I'm just going to cut out the ear holes from the design, and I'm just probably going to leave it as a scarf. He likes it that way. So now it's time for probably what is going to be my second least favorite part of this project besides the closed loops, and that is figuring out a way to attach this leather draw cord to this hood, because one, I don't have a metal thimble, which would be great for pushing the needle through this draw cord to actually secure it, and two, I don't know if it's gonna stay or if it's gonna be too weighted on the hood. So I don't know if it's gonna fully just weigh down the hood and if you can see the detail or not, but we'll find out. I also did a little knot to see what it would look like in the draw cord, and I think it's actually gonna be a little bit cute. So I'll just go ahead and add a few more knots when I place this. So maybe I can really just sew this a little bit tight around it, make some sort of binding. I'm not sure, and we'll find out. Alright, so actually lightly pulling on this cord, I think that worked. So if I just bind it in multiple spots, I might be able to keep this cord in place. So I went ahead and added on the rest of the tacking for the leather draw cord, so it is now all added on. I will admit it is now about 2 times the weight, which it was pretty lightweight before, and now it's kind of weighted. It's not too bad, but now I'm going to go ahead and just do a stitch box around the ear holes, just so that way they don't continue ripping, even though Clondyke won't be using them. Alright, so just like that, it's all reinforced. So here's the final garment, and I will try it on Clondyke tomorrow and hopefully get some good shots with him. Not quite on his head, but we're getting there. I think he'll enjoy it as a little, I don't know, scarf. You ready? You gonna go on the attack? Okay. Good boy. So as I'm sure most of you could tell, Clondyke isn't the biggest fan of hoods, and I found that out the hard way. However, I won't be making any future costumes with hoods, so I won't have to deal with that again. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of Clondyke's costume this year, whether or not you liked last year's more than this year's, and if you have a favorite costume of your own pet, what you dress them up in. And I hope everyone has a wonderful Halloween, and as always, take care, and I'll be seeing you here in the next video. Bye! I got this. Stay. Clondyke, stay. Up, 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 up. Will Clondyke finally become his inner Ewok, or will he hate this costume?